Algebra 1B, what's up? All right, so today, I'm not going to lie to you, this video is probably going to be fairly long. I'm going to try to make it as short as possible. So, let's jump right in. So today, we hinted on this last week, we're going to go from standard to vertex form. Now, why do we want to do that? Vertex form is very desirable. Why? Because when you have this form, you can immediately pull out the vertex as HK. And why is that important? Well, if you know the max or min of that parabola, you can plot that, got your axis of symmetry, find two other points, find the reflections, voila, parabola. So what we're going to do is we're going to take them from standard to vertex form because they're easier to work with. Now, you're going to see two videos on this. The first one is the way I really want us to do it, but it involves completing the square. It's a little more difficult. There is kind of a cheater way around it. And I don't like just throwing that out there because then you're like, oh, cool, I got this. And where did it come from? So that's why you're going to see the two videos. So my plan is this. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 examples. I know. We're going to do one. We're going to graph one. We might graph two. And then I'm just going to convert them and let you graph them on your own. Again, you should know where graph paper is available. Or you can just find some online and print it if you have it. Or hopefully you have some around. If not, make your own or just sketch it. Doesn't have to be perfect. I understand the situation. So that's what we're doing. Those of you who may not have taken completing the square seriously, you're going to struggle with this a little bit. So you might need to go back and look at those completing the square videos yeah, refresh your memory. But those of you who did, you're probably going to jump in and be okay. There's just one little twist to this. So without further ado, let's do one. So we'll start with y equals x squared plus 6x plus 7. Okay, so we want to graph that. Now what we could do is make an xy chart and start finding out and see if we can figure out what the parabola looks like. But if we can get it into this formula, we're more streamlined and directed with how to go. So that's what we're going to do. Now, keep in mind that I want it in this form. We keep in mind that there's going to be an a value up front if necessary. There's going to be this quantity squared and then plus a constant on the end. So we want to get that into this form. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate this into pieces. And this is where I really wish we had some interaction between us, because then I could probably explain things a little bit better, but we'll do our best. So to get it closer to that form, what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate the x squared and the 6x, and I'm going to put the 7 out there. Okay? So that gets it closer to that form. All I did was insert a set of parentheses. Now, if you wanted to factor something out front here, you could, but the only thing that you could pull out front would be a 1, and that doesn't really get us very far. And we don't really usually put that in. So I'm just showing you that that's the process, but we're not going to do that. Now, this is where completing the square comes in. We want this to turn into something squared. So we're going to complete the square here, okay? So that's what we're doing. We're focused just on this. So it's like we're taking this off to the side and completing the square. Now, completing the square, hopefully by now, is fairly easy for us. Completing the square is all about doing that b over 2 squared, which in this case b is 6, so that's 6 over 2 squared. That of course is 3 squared. We look at that before we do it. And that means I get a new c value of 9. So I'm going to add 9 in here. Now we can do a couple things here. Anytime we add something to this side, we should add it to this side. But here's the thing. I don't want it over here. I want this to just be y. So if I put a plus 9 over here, all I would wind up doing is subtracting 9 anyway to get this solved for y. So I like to skip that middleman right there and go ahead and just put minus 9 there on the end. That means what I've really effectively done is added nothing to this. I added a 9, then I subtracted it, which means that's effectively 0, so I didn't change it. It just changes the looks of it. So at this point, what I can do is now rewrite this as 1. This guy now factors as x plus 3 squared. And then, of course, that will be minus 2. So, voila, we have vertex form. So, again, the whole process is separating, completing the square, Keep track of your C's and keep track of what you're adding. The twist that's going to happen is when this guy actually factors out a little bit more, and instead of a 1 is any other number. I've got to remember that when I add something in here, this guy's attached to it. Here it was 1 times 9, so it's the same thing as adding 9. That's why I subtracted it there. But if this had been a 2, then it would be like effectively adding 18. So we'll do some examples of that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and graph this. So I'm going to have to stop and put my graph up and go from there. So there will be a little bit of break in there. So if you don't have your graph paper, get it close by. Let's pull this sucker up and let's go ahead and graph. All right, I'm back. Got my graph up here. So look at that. That's more like a circle than an arrow. Okay, so we want to go ahead and graph this guy. So now that it's in vertex form, and you can notice I dropped the 1, we don't really need that. So now that that's in vertex form, I can go ahead and pull out the vertex, which in this case is going to be -3, -2. Remember, this is minus h. Don't forget that. We pull that out as that -3. So that means -3, -2 is my vertex, which is right here. Now that's awesome because I know this is a parabola. I also know it opens up because my a value there is +1. So I know it's going to open up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dash down through here with my line of symmetry. Oof, kind of missed it there. Let me move that. That looks hideous. So there's that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, well, I need some points on either side of this, right? So I'm just going to pick some points. 0 is a nice x value to plug in. And when I say pick points, I'm picking x values. I need points either to the right of this vertex or to the left. So x values here to the right. So I'll start with 0. If I put a 0 in there, I get 0 plus 3, which is 3. Squared is 9. And 9 minus 2 is 7. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anytime you get 1 point, you now have 2 if it's not the vertex. I was 1, 2, 3 spaces away, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 spaces away. You have an axis of symmetry, so that is a reflection of that. I'm probably not going to go much further just because it'll push me up off my graph. So that means I'm going to have to come in a little bit. So let's try that -2. Let's put a -2 in there. -2 plus 3 is 1. Squared is 1. And 1 minus 2 is -1. So when I put in a -2, I have a -1. Of course, that's 1 unit away. So 1 unit away I have is reflection. That allows me to get an idea of what this parabola is doing. And it looks like that. And that's it. So again, if you're having trouble when you go to graph or you're not 100% sure, you can pull up Desmos, you can go ahead and graph it, and you can go from there. So let's get rid of this. Let's try another example. Let's take, oh, here's the other thing I wanted to mention. If at any time you're like, hey, I think I can do that one, pause the video, do it on your own, then come back. I'm not going to do any of those pause, you do, then check. I'm going to let it go on your comfort level. So we have y equals x squared minus 8x plus 17. Looks ugly, right? Same process, very similar to the one we just did. So what I want is vertex form. Y equals a times the quantity of x minus h squared plus k. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to group the x squared minus 8x, and I'm going to put the plus 17 outside there. Notice I left a gap. I need my new c value. I want this squared. Again, I could factor out a 1 here if I wanted. It's not going to change anything. Don't need it, but I could do that. So I need my new c value. So that comes from b over 2 squared, which in this case is -8 over 2 squared, which is -4 squared, which is 16. So I'm going to go ahead and add 16 in here. Now, again, normally what we do is add 16 here and then add 16 over here. But I don't want anything here with the y. So to counteract adding that 16 there, I'm going to subtract 16 there. So what I've effectively done is added nothing. I've just changed the look of it, but I haven't changed the value. So that now will factor as x, don't forget you can use your little cheater if you want, minus 4 squared. And that of course will be plus 1. Notice I ditched the 1. We really don't need it. So now's when I would go to graphing. Let me do a little, let's try it this way. This will probably be okay. So what I know is my vertex is 4, 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So it's right there. So I have a line of symmetry down through there. I need points to the left or right. I'm going to work my way, I think, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and use 3. Because if I do an x value of 3, 3 minus 4 is negative 1, squared is 1, plus 1 is 2. So 3 gives you a value of 1, 2. He's 1 unit away, so over here at 5 will also be a 2. So that was 2. Now let's get a value a little bit further away. I don't want to go too far, like 0 is tempting, but that's going to push me off my graph. So I'm going to go ahead and just go to 2. Let's put in a 2. So if I put in the next value of 2, 2 minus 4 is negative 2, squared is positive 4, plus 1 is 5. So 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That guy is 1, 2 away, 1, 2 away with my axis of symmetry. And I get a parabola that looks like that. Hopefully that was pretty easy. Now, what happens if there's something in front of the x squared? Well, this adds one little wrinkle. It's not too bad, but it does change things a little bit. So let's put in y equals 2x squared plus 12x plus 13. Whew. Scary, right? It's not bad at all, trust me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to separate 2x squared plus 12x. I'm going to put 13 on the outside. Now, I cannot complete the square when a is bigger than 1, so I got to pull that 2 out. So I'm going to do that. So y is going to equal 2 times x squared plus 6x. So all I did was factor out that 2. Now I have my a. Now, I'm going to add a new c value, and then I have my plus 13 there. Now, completing the square, same process. B over 2 squared, in this case is 6 over 2 squared, which is 3 squared, little cheater, that's a 9. So, what I'm doing is I'm adding a 9 in here. Now, this is that wrinkle that I'm talking about. If I'm adding a 9 inside of those parentheses, what I'm really doing is adding 18 there, because that 2 is attached to that 9. So when I complete the square here and drop it in here, that 2 is affecting that. So I've really added 18. So when I go to balance that, instead of adding 18 over here, I'm going to take it off over there. So I'm going to subtract 18. So what I've done is effectively added nothing to the equation. I've just changed the look. I added 18 here, I subtracted 18 here, so I still have the same equation. It's just going to be a different form. Again, don't forget it's now 18 because of that 2 out front. You have to account for that factor you pulled out front there. So now this is going to factor into x plus 3 squared, and that of course is going to get you minus 5. Now I have vertex form. So I guess we could sketch this quick. I need my board with my thing on there. So my vertex here is -3, -5. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, this will probably be a little ugly. Axis of symmetry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some other values in. I'm going to keep in mind that 2 there. What that does is I know it opens up, and it also is going to make it narrower, which means that u is going to jump up faster. So I probably don't want to go too far away from the vertex. So we'll put in a -2 here. -2 plus 3 is 1, squared is 1, times 2 is 2, minus 5 is -3. So -2 has a value of -3. So this guy will also be over there. And then I guess a 0 will not work. No, 0 won't work. We'll go to -1. -1 plus 3 is 2, squared is 4. 2 times 4 is 8, minus 5 is 3. So -1 gives you a value of 1, 2, 3. So you see it jumps up a lot quicker. So doing his reflection, I'm looking at a U shape like that. As you can see, it's a lot more narrow. Okay? I know I'm going through the graphing process quickly, but we should have done enough of that prior. So at this point, I think I'm going to go just about converting them, and you guys can pause and graph and check through Desmos, or this video is going to get crazy, ridiculously long. Now, what about this? This is fun. So I have y equals -2x squared plus 4x plus 2. Very similar, but as you notice, I added that one little wrinkle. That's that negative in there. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to go ahead and group. Then we're going to realize we have to complete the square to get vertex form. To complete the square, I need an a value of 1. So I have to factor out a -2. Now be careful here. It's not that hard, but there's a lot of room for simple mistakes. If I factor out a -2, I'm going to have x squared minus 2x. Think about it. If I remultiplied, that would give me the positive 4x. Be careful there. Then I'm going to leave space for my new c value and add a 2 there. Now, c value. b over 2 squared, right? See why I harped on this completing the square a couple weeks ago? So that's going to be -2 over 2 squared, which is -1 squared, which is 1. Now, follow me here. We're going to add 1 right in there, because that'll have it factored nice and perfect square. What we're really adding there is a -2, because -2 times 1 is -2. We're really just added a -2 to this equation. So to counter that, I should add a -2 over here, or not putting it over there just to bring it over. I'm going to realize to counteract that on the same side of the equation, I would need to add 2. Since I put in a -2 and now I put in a +2, that's effectively 0. Doesn't change the value of the equation. So that gives me y equals -2 times x minus 1 squared, don't forget your cheater, and then plus 4. So there's my vertex form. So my vertex is going to be 1, 4. Do your axis of symmetry. Find a point or two to the left or right. Do its reflection and go from there. So let's step it up. Actually, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Because I have a feeling if I don't make you, a lot of you are not going to do it. Pause the video here. Do that one. Put it into vertex form. Come back, check your solution. It wouldn't hurt to graph it as well, but at least get it in vertex form. Come back and check your solution. Welcome back. So here it is. Here's my completing the square. Grouped 3x squared minus 6x. Factored out a 3. That made that 2. Kept the positive 3 outside. Completed the square. It is -2 over 2, which is -1. Squared is 1. So I'm adding 1 there. Keep in mind when you do that with the 3 out front, that's effectively adding 3 to both sides, or to that side. So instead of adding 3 to this side, I respond by subtracting 3. Now, you don't have to have this plus 0. I just put it in there so that we can realize that our vertex is going to be 1, 0. Apply your vertex, axis of symmetry, get a point or two on either side so that you get an idea of the shape of the U, draw it in. Easy peasy. All right, let's step it up. Step it up. Now we'll have some fun. I hope you're as excited as I am. So now, what happens if I have this guy? Y equals 1/2 x squared plus 3x plus 5/2. Fractions. Oh, I'm scared. Don't forget, you can pull up Desmos or you can use your calculator. Don't be afraid of the fractions. Okay. What are we going to do? All right, same process. I'm going to group. And then I'm going to have my plus 5/2 out here. Okay. So now you cannot complete the square unless this a value is 1. So we've got to factor out a 1/2. So y equals 1/2 times x squared plus, now careful, what do you multiply here to get 3x? This needs to be a 6x. We haven't done a whole lot of factoring by fractions yet, so be careful there. Remember, if you remultiply, you should go back to what you had. Gonna leave a space for my new c value and plus 5/2. So my c value is b/2 squared, 6/2 squared, or 3 squared. There's my cheater. That, of course, is 9. Now, I'm adding a 9 in there. Oops, I should use a different color. Let's use green. I'm going to add a 9 in here. Again, be careful. Because of this 1/2 out front here, when you multiply that times that 9, you're effectively adding 9/2. Same process as before. It's just that 1/2 times 9 is 9/2. Instead of adding a 9/2 over here, I'm going to subtract it from here. So I'm effectively adding 0 and not changing my equation, just the looks. So I'm going to subtract 9/2 from there. So now we got to do a little cleanup. We should be good. So y equals 1/2 times x plus 3, don't forget your cheater, squared. And then this 5/2 minus 9/2 is -4/2, which is the same thing as -2. See how that cleaned up very well? So I've got a vertex of -3, -2. Don't forget, when you put your vertex and your axis of symmetry in, when I go to choose a value to the left or the right, I'm probably going to try my best to choose values here that when they square, multiplying by 1/2 is pretty. What do I mean by that? If you can put in a next value like -1, when you do that, you would get a 2 here, you would square it, you get a 4. When you multiply that by 1/2, you get 2. So you're thinking ahead, you're thinking down the road. I'm going to multiply this sucker by 1/2. So let's have this thing, once I square it, come out to be a nice even number, if possible. If not, you can plot halves and all that. Cool. I hope that one's all right. Let's do one more like that. Oh. You know what we should do? Combine fractions and a negative. That's awesome. Here we go. Y equals -1/3 x squared minus 8/3 x, and then minus 13/3. Scary, right? It's not bad. Let's do it. So, okay. Keep in mind what we're doing. I'm trying to get this to vertex form. So I'm going to group. Then I have that minus 13/3 on the outside. Okay. To get this into vertex form, I need to complete the square. To complete the square, I need a new c value. In order to do that, I have to have an a value of 1. So I'm going to have to factor out -1/3. That, of course, will leave x squared there. That's easy enough. Then again, think to yourself, what do I need here to multiply by -1/3 to get -8/3? I'm going to need a positive 8x. -1/3 times 8 will give us -8/3. You can use your calculator if you need to. We're going to put in a new c value, and then we have that minus 13/3 out here. So my new c value, b over 2 squared. B in this case is 8. Over 2 is 4. Before I square it, there's my cheater, that's 16. I'm adding 16 here. Now don't rush. When you're adding 16 here, you're actually adding negative 1/3 times 16. So what I'm really doing is I'm adding a negative 16/3. Negative 1/3 times 16 is negative 16/3. That's what I'm really adding there. So to counteract that, I'm going to add 16/3 here. Process is the same, numbers just get uglier. So I'm going to have y equals negative 1/3. This becomes x plus 4 squared. Then that one cleans up nicely. Negative 13/3 plus 16/3, that's 3/3, which we all know is 1. So you have a vertex of negative 4, 1. Have your axis of symmetry down through that negative 4, and then again you're going to try to choose values that you can multiply by negative 1/3 easily. So my goal would be to try to get this guy to work out to be 9. So if you put in like a negative 1, it would work. If it'll fit. If not, you can plot fractions if you have to. It'll work from there. So again, try to graph this. Check Desmos. Don't forget, you should tune into our Google Meet if you're having trouble with this. I'm not getting a lot of people in the Google Meets, and those people that are seem to be okay. We do a question or two, but that's what these are for. We don't have any interactions, so the Google Meets are so that you can pop one and be like, hey, I didn't understand that, I didn't understand this, whatever. But take advantage of those. They're here, I'm here, so use them. Okay. At this point, I'm hoping we're okay with this. I'm going to put a worksheet up. You're going to go ahead and do all those. Then we'll have another Google Meet where we'll check and see where we are with that. But as soon as we're okay with standard to vertex form, we're going to be good to go. All right. See you guys. Hope you have a good day.